Why should we commemorate the Holocaust on this date? We have come together to remember the victims and survivors of the Holocaust. But why do we do this today? In 2005, the United Nations, the UN, designated this as the date to commemorate the destruction of the Jews during World War II. From 1939 to 1945, the Jewish community in Europe was almost totally annihilated. That the UN decided there was a need to remember the horrific events that took the lives of 6 million Jews is heartening. The diplomats were inspired to prevent future genocides. The idea was to make this world a better place through education, to make sure that everyone understood the lessons of the Holocaust. There was to be no more Holocaust denial. There was to be no more anti-Semitism. We were supposed to learn to respect each other. Well, if you haven't noticed it yet, there is still anti-Semitism and Holocaust denial, even within the UN. So why do we commemorate today? Why did the UN decide on this date? It was on January 27, 1945. The soldiers of the former Soviet Union, what we call Russia today, liberated the largest and most notorious death camp, Auschwitz-Birkenau in Poland. It was in Birkenau that 4 gas chambers worked 24/7, and each gas chamber was capable of killing about 2,000 people at a time. Of the 6 million Jews killed in the Holocaust, about 1 million were killed in Birkenau. When the Russian soldiers, men who were already battle-hardened, found this camp, they were shocked by what they saw. So do you think it was a good choice for the UN to select this date to commemorate? Well, let's think about it a little bit more. Was this the end of the war? When the Russians liberated the 42 camps that made up the Auschwitz network of camps, did that mean all the Jews were free? Was this the end of the killing of the Jewish people? The answer to these questions is all the same. No. No, it was not the end of the war. The war in Europe ended May 8, 1945. No, there were thousands of other camps where Jews were prisoners throughout Nazi-occupied Europe. So all the Jews were not free. And sadly, no, that was not the end of the killing of the Jewish people. Countless thousands more died in the months that followed. They died on the death marches as the Nazis retreated back towards Germany. Tens of thousands of men and women who had been prisoners in the Auschwitz camps were led at gunpoint away from the advancing Russians. The vast majority of them did not survive. Other camps continued to work. Jewish slave laborers died from starvation, illness, beatings, and this continued until May. So why do we commemorate in January? The war in Europe officially ended on May 8, 1945. This is remembered as VE Day, Victory in Europe Day. Why don't we commemorate the Holocaust on this date? By this time, the vast majority of the Jews were liberated, but Jewish suffering was far from over. Countless Jews who had been subjected to years of abuse died in the days, weeks, and months after the war. Survivors were left to try to rebuild their lives out of the ashes of Europe. Many found that they alone, of all the members of their extended families, survived. They were in poor health, alone in the world, and had no home to go to. They went from concentration camps to displaced persons, DP camps. The war was over, but Jewish suffering continued. Survivors can tell you their suffering continues still as they have to live their lives with the painful losses and horrific memories. So it's difficult to quantify the end of the Holocaust. So why don't we commemorate the beginning? Retrospectively, we know that Kristallnacht, the Night of the Broken Glass, also known as the November Pogrom of 1938, was the first time Jews were openly murdered, synagogues and Jewish properties were destroyed, and thousands of men were arrested and put into concentration camps in Nazi-controlled areas. Though Jews in Poland, France, Italy, Greece, Hungary, Romania, the Netherlands, and elsewhere may have read about the pogrom, it did not directly impact them. For Jews in other countries, the Holocaust started for them when the Germans invaded their countries. And those invasions came at different times. So there is no one universal beginning of Jewish suffering. The majority of Jewish people commemorate the Holocaust on Yom HaShoah, which is after Passover in the spring. Well, why did we pick that date? That was not the end of the war either. The original proposal was to hold Yom HaShoah on the 14th of Nisan, the anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, which was on April 19, 1943. But this was problematic because the 14th of Nisan is a day immediately before Passover. The date was moved to the 27th of Nisan, which is 8 days before Yom Ha'atzmaut, Israeli Independence Day. Why the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising? When Jews fought back against the Nazis knowing full well they would not win. Jews in the ghetto, with their few guns and homemade bombs, could not defeat the Nazis with their planes, tanks, machine guns, and flamethrowers. But the point of the uprising was not to win. It was to fight back as proud Jews. Let us not forget Orthodox Jews commemorate on Tisha B'Av. That is yet another date. Despite the fact that the Jewish community had been commemorating the Holocaust on Yom HaShoah, the UN selected January 27th as a tribute to the Russians and to acknowledge an acknowledgement that Birkenau is the most detested symbol of the Holocaust. The Jews selected the 27th of Nisan. Both of these commemoration dates were picked for different but legitimate reasons. But for those of us in the survivor community, we remember the Shoah every day. The survivors are regularly reminded of the family and friends who did not live to see the end of the war. They may have flashbacks to bring them back to painful memories. They may also suffer physically today from the hardships they endured back then. Such traumatic injuries to the mind and the body do not just go away. For someone like me, the child of survivors, every time we see our parents with our children, we remember that we did not have grandparents. The deep love that binds my children with my father is an experience I never knew. And I feel diminished by that loss. But life goes on, and so do we. Have I confused you? What date should we commemorate? Do we need to make it an either-or? We can embrace every opportunity to teach about this tragic history in the hope that maybe, just maybe, we will make others understand what hate can do. Maybe, just maybe, we can make people realize that we have a common humanity. And maybe we can treat each other with acceptance and respect more than just one day a year. Thank you.